Good morning. Welcome to this Sunday gathering of Fountain Street Church, January 21st, 2024. I'm the Reverend Jody Betten. I'm filling in for Reverend Christopher this morning, who's on vacation. Hope he's enjoying himself. Members and friends alike, a beloved community, we gather here on a spiritual journey filled with peace, hope, faith, love, and justice. We gather to hear a word of good news that will comfort us, and we listen for a challenging word that will spur us on to our better selves, whether you're a person of deep faith or deep doubt, whether new to faith or on the path for many years, whether old or young or in between. No matter where you are on your journey, you're welcome among us. If it's your first time here, a special welcome. Please participate with us as you are comfortable. If you're watching by live stream or video later, please feel part of us as well. This service doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens because of the heart and skill of many of the excellent staff and volunteers here. Thank you, Jonathan, for warming our hearts this morning with that beautiful prelude, getting us ready to hear, to listen, to be together. A special thank you to two Daniels this morning. Daniel Richardson will be sharing the offertory with us. He was among the chapel folks, and so we're thankful that you're with us, Daniel. And my partner in crime, so to speak, Daniel. Dan is going to be the liturgist this morning, so I feel grateful for that support as well. I invite you to take a deep breath, to feel with confidence the earth holding you, to know that this sanctuary is safe space to be together for worship. Our call to community this morning comes to us in the words of Martin Luther King Jr.
We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. There are some things in our social system to which all of us ought to be maladjusted. Hatred and bitterness can never cure the disease of fear. Only love can do that. We must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love.
Here we bring new water.
Lovely, thank you, choir. I invite you now to greet one another by passing the peace. Pay attention to those among us who you might not know in particular. Make sure they feel welcome. Peace be with you.
Peace be with you, sir. Maybe they headed south.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
The ancient witness, this too shall pass, from the Talmud. King Solomon was wise and powerful with riches beyond compare, and yet he was not content. I am too often depressed by life, he told his advisors. If things go my way, I do not trust that they will last. And if they don't go my way, I fear my woes will never end. I have dreamt that there is a ring that contains the knowledge that will bring me peace of mind. Go find that ring. I wish to have it by the feast of Sukkot, 6 months from now. The king's advisors went on their own way, asking in each place for this marvelous, powerful ring that would bring their king peace of mind. They went to the finest jewelers and goldsmiths and described the magic qualities of that ring. They traveled far and wide, but no one had heard of such a ring. 6 months passed. On the night before the feast, the advisors still had not found the ring. They had given up, all but the youngest among them. Unable to sleep, the youngest walked the city streets all night long. In the morning, he found himself on a street with very poor homes. He saw an old man setting his simple jewelry and trinkets for sale. And in one last attempt, he described the ring to this man. The old man was quiet for a time, and then he smiled. He went inside his simple dwelling and returned with a plain gold ring. With a sharp tool, he engraved something on it and laid it in the advisor's hand. And as the advisor read what the man had written on the ring, his heart was filled with joy. "This is the ring! This is the ring!" he exclaimed. And he gave the old man all his money, and he hurried back to the palace. And that evening at the feast, King Solomon asked his advisors, "Have you found the ring of my dreams?" "We have, Your Highness," said the youngest. He came forward and placed the ring in King Solomon's hand. The king looked at the ring and read the Hebrew words engraved there. Kom, za, avor. This too shall pass. The king's sorrows and joys gave way to peace. And the king was reminded in that moment that all his riches and all his glory were impermanent, and all his sorrows and all his pain would pass away as the seasons and the years go by. And from that time on, King Solomon wore the ring and was reminded in good times and in bad, this too shall pass.
I was listening to you rehearse this morning. Your words are going to come back to haunt you. Thank you for that lovely piece. Thank you, Austin and Todd. Really, really beautiful. Our contemporary witness this morning is, we'll be reading responsively Rosa Parks by Nikki Giovanni. This is for the Pullman porters who organized when people said they couldn't, and carried the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender to the Black Americans in the South so they would know they were not alone.
This is for the Pullman porters who helped Thurgood Marshall go south and come back north to fight the fight that resulted in Brown v. Board of Education. It was the Pullman porters who whispered to the traveling men, both the blues men and the race men, so that they would know what is going on.
This is for the Pullman porters who smiled as if they were happy and laughed like they were tickled when some folks were around, and who silently rejoiced in 1954 when the Supreme Court announced its 9-0 decision that separate is inherently unequal.
This is for the Pullman porters who smiled and welcomed a 14-year-old boy onto their train in 1955. They noticed his slight limp that he tried to disguise with a doo-wop walk. They noticed his stutter and probably understood why his mother wanted him out of Chicago during the summer when school was out. 14-year-old black boys with limps and stutters are apt to prove themselves in dangerous ways when mothers aren't around to look after them. So this is for the Pullman porters who looked over that 14-year-old while the train rolled the reverse of the Blues Highway from Chicago to St. Louis to Memphis to Mississippi.
This is for the men who kept him safe. And if Emmett Till had been able to stay on that train all summer, he maybe would have grown a bit of a paunch, certainly lost his hair, probably have worn bifocals and bounced his grandchildren on his knee, telling them about his summer riding the rails. But he had to get off the train and ended up in Money, Mississippi, and was horribly, brutally, inexcusably, and unacceptably murdered.
This is for the Pullman porters who, when the sheriff was trying to get the body secretly buried, got Emmett's body on the northbound train, got his body home to Chicago, where his mother said, "I want the world to see what they did to my boy."
And this is for all the mothers who cried.
And this is for all the people who said, "Never again."
And this is about Rosa Parks, whose feet were not so tired. It had been, after all, an ordinary day, until the bus driver gave her an opportunity to make history.
This is about Mrs. Rosa Parks from Tuskegee, Alabama, who was also the field secretary for the NAACP.
This is about the moment Rosa Parks shouldered her cross, put her worldly goods aside, was willing to sacrifice her life so that that young man in Money, Mississippi, who had been so well protected by the Pullman porters, would not have died in vain.
When Mrs. Parks said no, a passionate movement was begun. No longer would there be reliance on the law. There was a higher law. When Mrs. Parks brought the light of hers to expose the evil of the system, the sun came and rested on her shoulders, bringing the heat and the light of truth.
Others would follow Mrs. Parks. 4 young men in Greensboro, North Carolina would also say no. Great voices would be raised, singing the praises of God and exhorting us to forgive those who trespass against us.
But it was the Pullman porters who safely got Emmett to his granduncle, and it was Mrs. Rosa Parks who could not stand that death. And not being able to stand, she sat down.
Our centering hymn this morning is "We Are a Gentle, Angry People." We'll sing the first 4 verses of number 170. You might wonder why one should never waste a good sermon. So it's good to see you again after a couple weeks. I believe it was 2 weeks ago when Reverend Christopher said, "You never step in the same river twice." So this is a new river we're stepping into. And I want to remind you that I am your interim consulting minister. I'm a trained intentional interim minister. That's 80 hours of official training, and I have 4 churches under my belt. And I'm in the budget until June. So you're not alone as you step into this river, walk this journey. So again, I want to invite you to take a deep breath. And you've been here before. You've been between ministers before. So this is not completely new territory for you. But wait. I've heard that you can't hear me when I'm standing there. Can you hear me now? The now famous phrase, "Can you hear me now?" comes from a cell phone ad. I don't even remember which one. I'm probably aging myself. But it had to do with physical proximity to a cell phone signal, right? What I'm talking about this morning is not physical location, but social location. Social location is the social position an individual holds based upon social characteristics deemed to be important by a particular society. In the US of A, we deem social class to be important. Gender is important. Sexual orientation, ethnicity, race, religion, the first language spoken, education, and there are many other things that define our social location. Sociologists would argue that the social location of an individual profoundly influences who they are and who they become, their interactions with others, their self-perception, their opportunities, and outcomes. For the most part, our social location is one of privilege. Most of us in this room are white, probably mostly well-educated, English speakers, and from middle to upper middle class. Perhaps if we consider another social location, we can see ourselves better. So today I want to think for a minute about Martin Luther King Jr., his social location, and his anti-racism work. Nikki Giovanni's poem, Rosa Parks, is just one thread of stories of the various attempts by Black Americans to address racism and to heal our country of its original sin. The question is always appropriate. Can you hear us now? Black Americans' rebellion began when they were captured by slave traders in Africa and resisted. Their attempts to stay alive continued on the slave ships as they mutinied or went overboard to avoid becoming slaves. At some point in each stage of their history along the way, they rebelled and fought back to say to anyone who would listen, this is not right. This is not how humanity thrives. This is evil. We aren't in agreement with you. You are wrong. Can you hear us now? A slave, Jemmy, in 1739 near the Stono River on a Sunday, a day when the slaves didn't have to work, led a group of seasoned soldiers to escape and march to St. Augustine, Florida, where under Spanish rule, they would be free. 100 in all marched down the road to the city. They fought for more than a week before their rebellion was put down. The next year, in 1740, there were over 50 slave rebellions in South Carolina alone. In American Negro Slave Revolts, a book by Herbert Aptheker, there are at least 250 slave revolts recorded. Others have recorded more than 300, and that doesn't include the revolts that are not recorded. I wonder why they couldn't be heard. I wonder if I had lived then, if I would have been able to hear. During the Civil War, after the Emancipation Proclamation, over 200,000 black free men and freed slaves fought. Pulitzer Prize winner Eric Foner, author of Freedom's Lawmakers, estimates that about 2,000 black Americans held public office at local, state, and federal levels during Reconstruction. They all lost their positions as governments ruled against their election, or actually created alternative governments of all white elected officials. These were people of little or no social standing, still doing what they could. There are 4,743 lynchings recorded to have occurred in the South from 1882 to 1968, at least one a week, according to the NAACP. Most victims of lynchings were political activists, not men who went after white women, labor organizers, or black men and women who violated white expectations of black deference. Black journalist and editor Ida B. Wells launched a fierce anti-lynching campaign in the 1890s. Why couldn't they hear her or the efforts of the blacks who protested? Historian Isabel Wilkerson writes, "The first big step the nation's servant class ever took without asking was the Great Migration North to help with the war effort in 1914. And when the U.S. finally sent troops over, 700,000 blacks registered to fight. In World War I, some were denied access to service. And those who did serve came home to overt racism. Yet, the culture and the arts thrived in the Harlem Renaissance. Jazz was born in New Orleans. Blacks gained economic prosperity. Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was the richest black neighborhood in North America and was burned to the ground in 1921, leaving 9,000 blacks homeless and 300 dead. For the Second World War, 2.5 million blacks registered, 1 million fought, but black veterans could not avail themselves of the GI Bill when they got home. After the Supreme Court's Brown v. Board of Education that nullified the country's separate but equal doctrine in 1954, armed with hope, blacks began to register and organize people to vote. Local NAACP chapters began sprouting up in small towns. Maybe someone was listening. Maybe someone could hear. When Emmett Till was murdered in 1955, the head of the NAACP, Roy Wilkins, lambasted Mississippi and called Emmett's murder a lynching. Quote, "It would appear from his lynching that the state of Mississippi has decided to maintain white supremacy by murdering children," unquote. His mother, Mamie Mobley, dared to honor her son with an open casket to show the world what they did to my baby. Because no one would listen? Maybe if you can't hear us, you can see. After all, for most of us, hearing isn't our primary sense, right? We could recall the boycotts, the sit-ins, the marches, the strikes. And in spite of their social location, Black Americans fresh out of slavery became engineers and scientists and activists and teachers and artists. On March 14, 1968, at the Grosse Pointe High School, right across the state, Martin Luther King Jr. spoke. He said, "I'm absolutely convinced that a riot merely intensifies the fears of the white community while relieving the guilt. But it is not enough for me to stand before you tonight and condemn riots. It would be morally irresponsible for me to do that without at the same time condemning the contingent, intolerable conditions that exist in our society. These conditions are the things that cause individuals to feel they have no other alternative than to engage in violent rebellions to get attention. And I must say tonight that a riot is the language of the unheard." He continued, "And what is it America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro has worsened over the past years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. It has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice and humanity." Nietzsche said it this way: "A person has no ears for that which experience has given no access." If you want to remember that, it's a quote on the cover of your program. A person has no ears for that which experience has given no access. I wonder how intentional the segregating of neighborhoods was. We, as white folks, must become so uncomfortable with our social location that we can hear anew the cries of those who suffer. Unfortunately, we often need an event like the murder of Patrick Lyoya in our own backyard to spark outrage before we can hear the cries of the unheard. What is the cry for help that we are not hearing today? As she left her position among you, she told you of misogyny and the sexism that she experienced. A woman from a different social location than I am. Another woman from a different social location than I am told you when she left of the misogyny and the sexism that she experienced. You're stuck with me until June 30. I want to invite you to take a deep breath and recall the words of the choir. Winter's icy blast, and then spring and summer. This too shall pass if we can hear, if we can take the time to let our experience give us access. They sang something like this. I learn as I grow, sometimes things I did not know show answers very clear. I want to invite you to take a moment to listen, to reflect, to wonder. Howard Thurman inspires us as we seek to incorporate all that is comforting and respond to all that is challenging. He wrote, "In the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of the holy, my heart whispers, keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in good times or in tempests, I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve." Amen. Indeed, because of our social location, one of the privileges for many of us is discretionary income. And the gift that this church has given to take half of its offering each Sunday to distribute it. This Sunday's plate is designated for an organization that Wally Knack is going to tell us about called Answer Relief, right? All right. That little box, just slide it to the side.
In 2001, from this very pulpit, the then interim minister, Bill Freeman, announced a unique program that had been created by a member of this church, Earl Canfield, called Answer. And what made Answer unique is that it gives the opportunity for us to take care of poor Nepalese children. And makes this special particularly, an Answer is that the money, the cost of that is $250 then. Today it's $450, but it pays for the total tuition and expenses of a young, poor Nepalese child. And the cost of those expenses are paid for from your donation. And the amount of money that administration requires for all this program, we on the board take care of raising that. And the benefit to you from doing this is you get to pick out from our list of children who have been selected by our Nepalese staff who are poor kids. You then exchange letters with them twice a year and pictures with them twice a year. They become part of you, and you also get a transcript of what they're doing in school. So you have this very intimate contact for a very small investment. And so back on that day in 2001, 10 people from this church joined up and became sponsors. Today, we hope there'll be more of you who wish to become sponsors. And in the social hall, Bruce Morrison, John Considine, Dick Happel, and I will be there to answer any questions, and we do hope you'll join us. Thank you very much.
I got to hear a little bit more about this organization when Wally met with Christopher and I. It's a fascinating organization. I do hope you'll avail yourselves of Wally's presence in the social hall after the service. And now we are privileged to have Daniel Richardson with us while the offering is being received. Thank you, Daniel. I want to remind you of the offerings that are offered, or the events that are offered this week. They're listed on the back of your program. Take that with you so that you can be reminded of the things going on here. There's also The Beat. If you're not getting an email called The Beat, you're missing some information. Let Katie in the office know so that you can stay up to date with what's going on. And meet Wally in the social hall. Howard Thurman inspires us as we seek to incorporate all that is comforting and respond to all that is challenging. Hear him again as we go. In the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of the holy, my heart whispers, keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in good times or in tempests I may not forget that to which my life is committed. Keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve. Amen.